There's a moment in every conversation when you can feel yourself slipping. You start with a clear point, but then you add a little more, then a little more. And before you know it, you're explaining your explanation, chasing clarity while the other person drifts further away. We don't do it because we're weak or uncertain. We do it because we care. We want to be understood. We want to avoid being judged. We want to make sure there are no gaps, no misunderstandings, no flaws. Yet ironically, the more we explain, the less impact our words have. The more we talk, the less people hear. And somewhere deep inside, you already know this. You've seen how people with presence, the calm ones, the confident ones, the ones who seem to lead rooms without raising their voice, rarely say more than necessary. They speak with intention, precision, and a sense of grounded clarity. It's not magic. It's not charisma. It's a skill, a discipline, a way of thinking, and you can learn it. Over-explaining isn't just a communication habit. It's a psychological response, a mix of insecurity, overthinking, fear of conflict, and a desire to please. But communication, real communication, isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about delivering meaning with impact. It's about understanding the moment, choosing your words with purpose, and trusting that silence doesn't erase you. When you learn to stop over-explaining, something shifts. People pay more attention. Your ideas land deeper. Your presence grows. You stop leaking energy. You start commanding it. So today, we're going to explore how smart communicators speak, how they say less but mean more, how they've mastered the art of clarity, confidence, and restraint, and how you can step into that same level of communication power, not someday, not eventually, but starting right here in the next few minutes. Because the truth is simple. Your voice becomes more powerful the moment you stop trying so hard to prove it. Let's begin. There's a kind of peace that enters the room when someone speaks with intention. You can hear it in their pace, in the way they choose their words, in the way they don't rush to fill every silence. They don't panic when there's a pause. They don't sprint through explanations. They aren't performing for approval. They're simply present, grounded in the value of their message. And that presence, that quiet, steady confidence, is what makes people lean in. Most of us were never taught this. We were taught to be polite, to be detailed, to be thorough, to avoid misunderstandings, to cover every angle. In school, long explanations were rewarded. In early jobs, we were praised for giving more information, not better information. And in our personal lives, we developed the habit of cushioning every point with disclaimers, backstories, and unnecessary context. We learn to over-explain as a survival strategy. But survival is not the same as influence. Survival is not the same as leadership. Survival is not the same as communicating with impact. And the moment you realize this, something cracks open inside you. You begin to see that over-explaining isn't a sign of clarity. It's a sign of doubt. It's a sign that you don't fully trust your message, or the listener, or yourself. It's a habit that keeps you small, tangled, and unheard. But communication, true communication, is not about volume. It's about alignment. It's about choosing the right idea, the right angle, the right emotional tone, and delivering it with focus and intention. Smart communicators don't speak more. They think more. They listen more. They observe more. And when they finally speak, their words land with weight because they've been chosen, not spilled. And that's what we're diving into today. Throughout this journey, you'll learn how to understand the psychology behind over-explaining, why your mind pulls you into unnecessary details, and how to break free from that instinct. You'll learn the communication habits that highly respected leaders, speakers, and negotiators use to hold attention with fewer words. You'll learn the power of silence, pacing, structure, emotional clarity, and confident brevity. You'll learn how to speak with impact, not by performing, but by simplifying, not by trying harder, but by trying less. By the end of this, you'll have a new relationship with your voice. You'll understand how to communicate with strength without sounding harsh, how to keep your message clear without sounding cold, how to express your point without drowning it in justification. And perhaps most importantly, you'll feel what it's like to finally trust your own words, because the world does not need more noise. It needs clarity. It needs communicators who know how to speak with purpose, not perfection. And that's exactly who you're becoming. If you want to understand why people over-explain, you have to start with the mind. Not the surface thoughts, but the quiet instincts beneath them. The moments when your voice tightens, your heartbeat quickens, and you suddenly feel the pressure to fill the air with more words than the situation actually requires. Over-explaining is almost never about the information itself. It's about reassurance, reassuring others, reassuring yourself, reassuring the moment. Deep down, most people over-explain because they fear one of three things: being misunderstood, being judged, or being rejected. These fears don't always show up loudly. Sometimes they whisper, but they influence how we speak far more than we realize. Think about the last time you explained something simple. Maybe a choice you made, a delay, a boundary, or an opinion, and suddenly felt the urge to justify yourself beyond what was necessary. The decision hadn't changed. The facts were the same. But the fear beneath them made you add more layers, more context, more disclaimers. It wasn't logic guiding you. It was anxiety disguised as clarity. And this matters because communication built on fear never lands with strength. It lands with noise. It lands with hesitation. It lands with a subtle, unspoken message. I don't fully trust that what I'm saying is enough. But here's something most people never realize. When you over-explain, you unintentionally train others to question you. You teach people that your decisions require validation. You teach them that your boundaries are negotiable. You teach them that your voice needs permission to stand on its own. This is why confident communicators don't just speak differently, they think differently. They trust their intention before they trust their explanation. Let's explore this deeper. Imagine two people giving the same answer. One says, "I'm not able to come tonight because I already have plans." Clear, direct, complete. The other says, "I'm so sorry. I really wish I could come. But I have this thing I promised someone I'd do, and it's been planned for a while, and I don't want to seem rude for saying no. It's just been a long week and I'm trying to rest. But I still really appreciate the invitation." Same message, completely different presence. The second person sounds like a storm of insecurity. They're drowning their own truth in justification. And the listener hears not the message, but the anxiety behind it. This is what over-explaining does. It pulls you away from the strength of your point and drops you into the emotional noise surrounding it. But here's the shift. The moment everything changes, people respect clarity, not justification. People trust confidence, not explanation. People follow simplicity, not speed. When you remove the fear, the sentence becomes clean. When you remove the overthinking, the message becomes powerful. So the first step in speaking with impact is learning to catch the emotional impulse before it becomes verbal clutter. Ask yourself, am I adding this because it's needed or because I'm nervous? Most over-explaining is not a communication issue. It's a confidence issue wearing a communication costume. But awareness alone isn't enough. You have to understand what's at stake. Every time you say more than necessary, you dilute the meaning of your words. You make it harder for people to remember the point. You make it easier for your message to get lost. And you give away the one thing great communicators protect relentlessly, their clarity. Clarity is power. Clarity is influence. Clarity is respect. Think of the most respected leaders you've listened to. They don't rush to justify themselves. They don't weave elaborate explanations for simple points. They aren't afraid of being misunderstood for a moment, because they trust that their consistency will speak louder than their explanations. They understand something fundamental. Your message is not strengthened by how much you say, but by how cleanly you say it. And here's the interesting part. Most people believe that over-explaining makes them sound helpful or thoughtful or detail-oriented. But in reality, it often has the opposite effect. It can make you sound uncertain or defensive or apologetic or scattered or even insecure. This doesn't mean you should speak in cold, abrupt statements. It doesn't mean stripping your communication down to blunt, robotic efficiency. It simply means learning to speak from intention, not from fear, because fear ramifies. Fear multiplies words. Fear fills silence with unnecessary details. But confidence, true confidence, simplifies. It cuts. It clarifies. It steadies the rhythm of your speech. It allows you to pause without panicking. It allows you to finish a sentence without feeling the need to add a backup sentence just in case the first one wasn't enough. Confidence is not loud. Confidence is clean. And this is the foundation for everything else you're about to learn. Because once you understand that over-explaining is a symptom, not a personality trait, not a flaw, but a response, you can start working at the root. You can begin to rebuild your communication from a place of strength, not fear. You start noticing the moments when you're about to speak, and you feel the impulse to add just one more detail. And instead of letting it spill out, you catch it. You breathe. You trust the message. You choose clarity over comfort. And slowly, conversation by conversation, sentence by sentence, your communication transforms. You stop rambling. You stop apologizing unnecessarily. You stop performing your explanations as if the world is waiting to criticize them. You simply speak with presence, intention, and grounded confidence, and people feel it immediately. Because smart communication is not about talking more. It's about thinking better. It's about trusting your message. It's about delivering the right words at the right moment in the right way. And the moment you master this, you'll speak differently for the rest of your life. There's a moment in powerful communication that most people overlook. It's not the beginning of a sentence or the moment you make your point. It's the space around your words. The pauses, the breaths, the controlled rhythm that gives your message shape and weight. If over-explaining is a symptom of fear, then powerful pacing is the expression of confidence. Think of someone whose presence fills a room, not because they speak loudly, but because they speak intentionally. Their words feel deliberate, grounded, unrushed. You can sense that they're not chasing the conversation, they're guiding it. That's the essence of impact. Not more words, but more meaning per word. To speak with impact, you have to master something that feels counterintuitive at first, the discipline of slowing down. Not dragging your speech out, but allowing your mind to lead your mouth instead of the other way around. Most people speak from urgency. They race through ideas. They cram sentences with unnecessary details because they're trying to outrun discomfort. Smart communicators do the opposite. They pause. They breathe. They let silence work for them rather than against them. And that silence, that brief, intentional stillness, does something incredible. It makes people listen. You've felt it before. When someone pauses right before they make an important point, the pause doesn't weaken the message. It strengthens it. It creates presence. It builds anticipation. It signals clarity. Silence is not the absence of communication. Silence is part of communication. But for someone who over-explains, silence can feel terrifying. It feels like a vacuum that needs to be filled immediately. So they rush. They add more context. They speak faster. They ramble. They dilute the moment. And suddenly, their message is lost. Not because it was wrong, but because it was drowned. Let's slow this down and look at it clearly. There are 3 kinds of silence in communication. There's insecure silence, the kind that feels like waiting for judgment, like standing in a spotlight. It's filled with anxiety. You're just counting the seconds until you can speak again. There's accidental silence, the kind that happens when your mind blanks and you scramble for more words. And then there's intentional silence, the kind great communicators use, the kind that gives space for your message to breathe. Intentional silence is a skill, one you cultivate, one you practice, one that changes not only how you speak, but how people experience you. Because when you're comfortable with silence, you send a message without saying anything at all. I'm not afraid. I'm not rushing. I'm in control of this moment. It's remarkable how quickly people respect someone who is comfortable with pauses. It makes you sound thoughtful, measured, and confident. Your words feel heavier. Your presence feels stronger. And the listener has space to absorb what you're saying. Great communicators understand that the impact of a message isn't in the quantity of words. It's in the contrast between them. If everything is rushed, nothing stands out. If everything is loud, nothing sounds strong. If everything is explained, nothing feels meaningful. Impact requires variation. Moments of energy, moments of calm, moments of pause. This rhythm is what gives your words texture. It's what makes people lean in, stay with you, and remember what you've said. Think of pacing like music. A song hits hardest when it has shape, when it rises, falls, slows, and builds. If a song were just constant sound with no variation, you'd tune out after a few seconds. Speech works the same way. Over-explaining is like playing every instrument at once. Without rhythm, without dynamics, without space. Smart communication is the opposite. It's intentional. It has contour. It has beats. It has emotional timing. Let's imagine a very simple line. I need more time. Say it rushed, with filler, with apologies, and it sounds like insecurity. Say it cleanly, calmly, with a breath before and after, and it carries authority. In communication, breath is not just a biological function, it's a strategy. When you pause, you reset your tone. You align your thoughts. You regain your footing. You show that you're present rather than panicked. People who over-explain rarely breathe. They empty themselves trying to fill the space. Their words blur together. And by the time they finish their explanation, they feel drained. Not because they said too much, but because they said it from a place of fear. Your pacing is a mirror of your mindset. When your pace is frantic, your mind feels frantic. When your pace is steady, your mind feels steady. And that steadiness transforms how every message comes across. Now, here's something important. Speaking with impact does not mean speaking slowly all the time. It means speaking in a way that reflects control, a way that allows your message to unfold with clarity rather than collision. Powerful pacing is dynamic. It rises when energy is needed, and it slows when depth is needed. It pauses when a point deserves space. It accelerates when excitement builds. It adapts, but at the core of all of it is one truth. You don't fear silence anymore. You don't rush to fill it. You don't compensate for it. You don't mistake silence for weakness. You use it as part of your expression. Because when you stop filling every second with words, your voice becomes more deliberate. When you stop explaining every detail, your message becomes more memorable. When you stop sprinting through your thoughts, your presence becomes more powerful. This is how smart communicators speak. Not always slowly, not always softly, but always intentionally. And when you master your pacing, when you learn to pause, to breathe, to trust the moment, you'll notice something profound. People start leaning in. People start listening more closely. People start taking your words more seriously. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you've changed how your presence feels. Impactful communication doesn't begin with your mouth. It begins with your mind, with the clarity you create before you speak. Because the truth is, most over-explaining doesn't happen out loud first. It begins internally, as mental clutter. Your thoughts race. You consider every angle. You imagine misunderstandings before they even exist. You try to anticipate reactions, prevent conflict, soften the blow, protect yourself from judgment. So by the time you open your mouth, your message is already tangled. The smartest communicators understand this. Clarity is not created in the moment of speaking. Clarity is created in the moment before. It's the silent second where you organize your intention, where you ask yourself, what is the actual point I'm trying to make? Where you separate what matters from what doesn't, where you release the need to protect yourself through words. Because every message has two layers, the idea and the noise around it. Over-explainers mix the two together until listeners can't tell where the message begins and where the anxiety ends. But powerful communicators do the opposite. They strip away the noise and speak only from the core. Let's explore this idea with something simple. Giving feedback. Most people stumble here. They dance around the message. They add disclaimers. I'm not upset, it's just that I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I don't mean to bother you, but I just feel like maybe... These phrases signal fear before the real message even arrives. But imagine if you asked yourself a different question right before speaking. What is the cleanest version of what I need to say? Suddenly, the message becomes simple. I'd like us to handle this differently next time. I need clearer communication going forward. This part didn't work, and here's what we can adjust. Same truth, less noise. More respect for you and for the listener. Clarity isn't cold. Clarity isn't rude. Clarity is kindness with structure. People don't want you to drown them in explanation. They want you to help them understand. Let's take another example. Setting boundaries. Boundaries are one of the most common triggers for over-explaining. You want to say no, but the guilt rushes in. You want to protect your time, but the fear of disappointing someone rises up. So you wrap your truth in a long, unnecessary justification. But boundaries don't need justification. They need clarity. I'm not available tonight. I won't be able to take that on. I need some personal time this weekend. These are complete sentences. They don't need a backstory. They don't require a list of excuses. They stand on their own. When you practice clean internal clarity, your external communication becomes effortless. Here's a simple but powerful principle that smart communicators use. Know your headline before you speak. Every message has a headline. The core point, the essence, the purpose. If you can't express the headline, you don't have clarity yet. And when you don't have clarity, you will over-explain. Think about news articles. The headline sets the direction. Everything else supports it. Without it, the information becomes scattered and overwhelming. Your communication works the same way. Before you speak, ask yourself, what's my headline? What is the one idea that must be remembered? What is the simplest version of what I'm trying to say? And once you have it, the rest becomes optional. You no longer feel the need to dump every detail just to feel safe. You choose what matters. You discard what doesn't. Because communication isn't about unloading everything you know. It's about guiding the listener toward what matters. Here's the next shift. Stop trying to pre-solve the entire conversation in your mind. Over-explainers imagine every possible reaction, confusion, frustration, disagreement, and try to counter all of them before the listener even responds. This leads to long, tangled explanations that overflow with unnecessary details. But powerful communicators understand a simple truth. You do not need to answer questions that haven't been asked. Say the core, wait, let the listener respond. Then add only what's needed. When you do this, you speak with calm confidence. You give the conversation space to breathe, and you treat the listener with respect. Because you trust them to ask for clarification if they need it. Smart communicators don't assume misunderstanding. They assume comprehension until proven otherwise. This shift alone transforms the way you speak. You stop padding your message. You stop delivering preemptive answers. You stop carrying the emotional burden of both sides of the conversation. Instead, you speak your truth cleanly, and then you listen, and something interesting happens next. People start engaging with you more clearly, because you've created a structure that invites clarity rather than confusion. You've built a communication rhythm where each side has room to think, respond, and understand. Now let's talk about another trap that fuels over-explaining. Emotional leakage. This happens when your message is simple, but your emotions spill into it and cause you to explain more than necessary. For example, you want to express disappointment, but instead of saying, "I didn't feel supported," you add layers of emotional reasoning, self-defense, and over-justification. Or maybe you want to express excitement, but you overload the message with details that drown the excitement rather than highlight it. Smart communication doesn't suppress emotion. It separates emotion from clutter. It lets the feeling be felt without letting it hijack the message. This is what clarity gives you. Emotional honesty without emotional overflow. When your intention is clear, your message becomes balanced. Calm, direct, human, not too much, not too little, just right. And here's the final piece of this chapter. Clarity is not achieved by speaking more. Clarity is achieved by reducing. Reduce the noise. Reduce the fear. Reduce the need to justify. Reduce the details that don't change the point. What remains after reduction is the truth. Simple, strong, memorable. When you master internal clarity, you no longer fear being misunderstood. Because you know your message is clean. You no longer fear judgment. Because your words come from intention, not anxiety. You no longer fear silence. Because your meaning doesn't need protecting. You become the kind of communicator whose words feel like they come from a steady place, a grounded place, a place of confidence and calm. And the world listens differently when someone speaks from that place. There's a subtle truth about communication that most people never learn. The listener doesn't remember everything you say. They remember how clearly you said it. Clarity creates impact. Simplicity creates power. And structure. Structure creates understanding. When people over-explain, the structure of their message collapses. Everything blends together. Every detail feels equally important. Every sentence attaches to the next like an overgrown vine. Before long, the listener can't tell what the main point is anymore. And neither can the speaker. Smart communicators, on the other hand, understand how to structure their ideas so that their message lands with precision instead of confusion. Think of structure as the invisible skeleton beneath your words. Listeners can't see it, but they feel it. It gives your speech shape, direction, flow. It prevents your ideas from collapsing under their own weight. And here's the part most people miss. Structure is not restrictive. It's liberating. Structure doesn't limit your freedom. It gives you the freedom to speak with clarity because you know exactly where your message is going. Let's explore the simplest structural principle great communicators use, one idea at a time. It sounds almost too simple, too obvious, but it's rarely practiced. Over-explainers jump from one idea to another before the first one is even landed. They add extra layers of context, side notes, disclaimers, and exceptions. They create a forest of information where the core message gets lost. But powerful communicators focus on one idea. They give it space. They explain it clearly. They support it with one or two relevant points. Then they pause. Then they move to the next idea. Cleanly, intentionally, confidently. The moment you learn to separate ideas instead of stacking them, your communication transforms. Your message becomes digestible. Your voice becomes more authoritative. And your listener stays with you effortlessly. Another principle smart communicators rely on is this. Lead with the point, then add the detail. Over-explainers do the opposite. They give all the detail first, the backstory, the reasoning, the build-up, and then reveal the actual point at the end. By then, the listener is overloaded. They've lost patience. The clarity is buried. But when you lead with the point, when you reveal the headline first, everything that follows becomes easier to absorb. For example, instead of saying, "So yesterday the team was reviewing the launch plan, and we noticed a few areas where the deadlines might not align, especially with the creative team still finalizing the assets, which could push our timeline back, so I think maybe we should." You simply say, "We need to adjust the launch timeline." Then add context if needed. The point leads, the details support. The listener stays oriented. This structure is powerful because it does not assume the listener has infinite patience or mental bandwidth. It respects their attention. It makes the message clear from the start. Here's a truth that shapes the mindset of every great communicator. If a listener doesn't know where you're going, they can't follow you. That's why structure matters. Let's talk about another structural tool smart communicators use. The rule of three. The human brain naturally remembers things in threes. 3 ideas, 3 examples, 3 steps. It's a rhythm that feels complete, but not overwhelming. Over-explainers often pile on 5, 7, 10 supporting points. But powerful communicators choose the best 3, or even the best 2, or just 1, if that's all that's needed. Because clarity is not about providing every possible angle. It's about providing the right angles. Here's another principle. Begin crisp, end crisp. Most over-explaining happens at the start and at the end of a message. At the start, because the speaker is warming up, searching for confidence. At the end, because the speaker is afraid to stop. So they circle the point again and again, rephrasing it unnecessarily. But strong communicators enter clean and exit clean. They start with intention. They end with completion. No drifting. No spiraling. No repetitive echoes of the same idea. A clean start grabs attention. A clean ending seals the message. One of the most powerful structural tools you can use is something called verbal signposting. It's the way you subtly guide the listener through your message, so they always know where you are and where you're heading. Phrases like, "Here's the key point. This is what matters most. There are 2 things you should remember. Let's look at the next part." These are not fillers, they're signals. They help the listener move with you. They reduce confusion. They keep attention anchored. And the more you guide the listener, the less you feel the urge to over-explain. Because you know exactly where the message is going, and so do they. Let's talk about transitions. Over-explainers often create rough, tangled transitions because they're thinking out loud, trying to find the next point in real time. Smart communicators transition smoothly because they've mentally organized their structure. A smooth transition sounds like this. Now let's shift to something equally important. Here's the second part of what I want to say. There's another angle we need to look at. These simple phrases act like bridges. They prevent your message from feeling scattered. And when your message feels structured, people naturally perceive you as more credible, more prepared, and more intelligent. Structure is confidence made visible. Even if internally you feel nervous, even if you're not completely sure how the listener will react. If your message has structure, you will come across as clear and composed. And here's something most people never realize. Structure is not just a communication tool. It's a thinking tool. When you learn to structure what you say, you begin structuring how you think. You become less overwhelmed. Your thoughts become more organized. Your ideas become sharper. You start communicating not from chaos, but from clarity. Now, let's talk about timing, not pacing, which we explored earlier, but timing of information. Smart communicators release information in the right order. They don't overwhelm the listener. They don't dump everything at once. They don't front-load or tangent hop. Instead, they think like storytellers. They reveal the right detail at the right moment, not sooner, not later. For example, when answering a question, they don't start with a backstory. They start with the answer, then give a supporting detail if needed, then stop. Because stopping, intentionally stopping, is part of structure too. Over-explainers don't like stopping. Stopping feels incomplete. Stopping feels risky. Stopping feels like the message isn't defended enough. But powerful communicators stop when the message is complete, not when they feel emotionally satisfied. This distinction is everything. Over-explainers tie completeness to emotion. Smart communicators tie completeness to clarity. This is what structure gives you. A clear beginning, a clear middle, a clear end. No spirals, no leakage, no endless trails of thought. Just meaning, delivered with confidence. And when you master structure, even simple structure, you feel a new strength rising in your communication. You feel grounded. You feel composed. You feel capable of expressing even complex ideas with ease. Because you're no longer speaking from a place of chaos. You're speaking from a place of design. And people respond differently when they feel that. They trust you more. They respect you more. They remember what you said. They follow your message instead of fighting through it. That's the power of structure. There's a shift that happens when someone speaks with real confidence, and it has nothing to do with volume, charisma, or extroversion. It comes from something much quieter. The ability to express your needs, your thoughts, and your boundaries without shrinking, without apologizing, and without drowning your message in explanation. To stop over-explaining, you have to develop what I call clean assertiveness, not aggression, not coldness, not dominance, but a calm, grounded ability to state your truth without unnecessary justification. Because over-explaining is often a disguised form of self-protection. You sense even the slightest possibility of conflict, disappointment, or misunderstanding. And immediately your mind reaches for extra words to soften the impact. You try to smooth every edge. You try to protect the other person's feelings. You try to control how they perceive you. You try to ensure the conversation stays comfortable, predictable, safe. But here's the truth. The more you try to protect yourself with words, the less powerful your words become. Clean assertiveness is the antidote to that. It's the art of standing in your message without wrapping it in layers of hesitation. It's the ability to communicate with kindness and authority at the same time. It's the confidence to trust that your truth is valid even when it's not padded with explanations. Let's explore what clean assertiveness feels like. Imagine someone says, "Why can't you help with this project?" The over-explainer panics internally. They think, "I need to justify myself. I need to make sure they don't think I'm lazy or selfish." So they reply with a spill of details. "Well, I'm already working on 3 other things. And yesterday I stayed up late trying to finish them, and I didn't sleep well. And I think I might be falling behind, and I'm not sure if I can manage everything, and I really don't want to let you down." It's too much, too apologetic, too defensive, too fearful. The clean, assertive communicator says something very different. "I'm not able to take that on right now." Full stop. Calm, respectful, complete. If the person wants to ask a follow-up question, they can. If more context is needed, you can provide it. But you do not lead with justification. You lead with clarity. The difference is night and day. Clean assertiveness is built on 3 pillars: clarity, self-respect, and emotional steadiness. Let's break those down. Clarity means knowing exactly what you want to say before you say it, not dancing around it, not softening it to the point of confusion, not giving 5 warm-up sentences before getting to the point. Clarity means you speak the message, not the anxiety. Self-respect means you believe your time, your energy, and your boundaries have value. Over-explainers often treat their time as negotiable. They act as if the listener is entitled to every detail of their reasoning. But self-respect creates healthier boundaries. No is a complete sentence. I can't is a complete sentence. That doesn't work for me is a complete sentence. You don't owe the world a dissertation every time you have a need. Emotional steadiness is the hardest part. The ability to stay calm inside your message, even when the moment feels uncomfortable. Because discomfort is what triggers over-explaining. A small look of confusion on someone's face, and suddenly you're elaborating. A moment of silence. And you start adding more context, a hint of disagreement, and you slide into apology mode. But emotional steadiness lets you pause, breathe, and hold your ground without spiraling into explanation. Here's a powerful truth. If you don't stay steady, your message won't stay clean. This is why emotional management is a communication skill. You can practice it. You can build it. And as it grows, your tendency to over-explain begins to fall away naturally. Let's talk about one of the most common triggers of over-explaining. The need to be liked. So many people over-explain because they believe that if they say less, they will appear cold, unhelpful, or rude. But this belief is false. In fact, people tend to respect you more when you communicate cleanly. Why? Because clarity signals confidence. Confidence signals boundaries. Boundaries signal self-respect. And people instinctively trust those who respect themselves. Clean assertiveness strengthens relationships, not weakens them. It removes passive-aggressive patterns, eliminates hidden resentment, and replaces confusion with honesty. Let's explore another trigger: guilt. Over-explainers often feel guilty for having needs, preferences, limits, or opinions. So they try to soften that guilt with extra words. But guilt is not a compass. Guilt is not a requirement for communication. Guilt should not be guiding your sentences. Communicating without guilt doesn't make you selfish, it makes you clear. Let's look at some everyday scenarios and compare over-explaining to clean assertiveness. Scenario 1. Saying no. Over-explaining. "I'm so sorry, I know this is really last minute, and I feel bad saying no because I know you're depending on people, and I really wanted to help. But I have so much going on." Clean assertiveness. "I won't be able to make it, but I appreciate you asking." Simple, respectful, complete. Scenario 2. Expressing a need. Over-explaining. "I hate to bother you, but the noise has been really distracting, and I'm really struggling to focus. And I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. It's just that I'm behind on my work." Clean assertiveness. "Could we lower the noise a bit? I'm trying to focus." Clear, direct, no emotional self-sabotage. Scenario 3. Correcting a mistake. Over-explaining. I don't want you to think I'm being picky. And I know you put a lot of work into this. But I think maybe this part isn't exactly right. And I might be misunderstanding. Clean assertiveness. There's one part we need to adjust. You can add detail after the message lands. But the point comes first. The goal is not to become blunt. The goal is to become clean. Communication becomes powerful when you remove the extra layers. The guilt, the fear, the rambling, the emotional cushioning, and speak from steady intention. Now let's talk about something subtle yet transformative. Your tone. Tone is the emotional color of your message. You can speak a clean sentence with a shaky tone and weaken it. Or you can speak the same sentence with a grounded tone and strengthen it. Smart communicators focus on tone as much as they focus on words. A grounded tone is calm, warm but firm, steady but not harsh, direct but not cold. People respond to tone more than words. If your tone is clear, people assume your message is clear. If your tone is uncertain, people assume your message is uncertain. Tone communicates confidence without aggression. Tone communicates respect without submission. Tone communicates boundaries without defensiveness. And when your tone is steady, something amazing happens. You no longer feel the need to over-explain, because the tone carries the confidence your words used to compensate for. The final piece of clean assertiveness is something simple but powerful. Stop apologizing for existing. Apologies should be meaningful, not habitual. Over-explainers apologize not for mistakes, but for presence, for taking space, for speaking up, for having boundaries. But when you stop apologizing unnecessarily, your communication becomes cleaner, your message becomes stronger, and people learn to take your words at face value, rather than seeing them as softened, diluted versions of your truth. Clean assertiveness is not about controlling others. It's about controlling your delivery. It's about respecting your own voice. It's about trusting that your truth doesn't need a permission slip every time you speak. And once you develop this skill, conversations become easier. Decisions become easier. Boundaries become easier. Life becomes easier. Because you stop performing your explanations and you start expressing your truth. There's a moment in every meaningful conversation where the real connection happens. Not when you're speaking, but when you're listening. Because listening is not passive. Listening is not silence. Listening is not simply waiting for your turn. Listening is participation. Listening is presence. Listening is how smart communicators gather the information they need to speak with impact. If over-explaining is a habit of talking too much, then powerful listening is the discipline of talking just enough. When you listen deeply, without interrupting, without anticipating your response, without mentally preparing your defense, you gain something over-explainers rarely have: precision. You understand what the other person actually cares about. You hear what they really mean. You sense the emotional undercurrent beneath their words. And suddenly, you no longer feel the need to guess, over-prepare, or overcompensate. Listening gives you clarity before you speak. And clarity eliminates the instinct to over-explain. Smart communicators know this. They understand that speaking with impact requires listening with intention, because when you truly listen, your words become sharper, cleaner, more relevant, and far fewer. Let's explore this deeply. Most people don't listen. They wait. They wait for their turn to respond. They wait for a gap to jump in. They wait to continue their point. And during that waiting, their mind races. What should I say next? How do I defend myself? How do I make sure they understand me? What if they misinterpret this? What if I sound wrong? This internal noise fuels over-explaining. You're not listening to understand. You're listening to survive the conversation. And survival mode always leads to too many words. But when you shift your intention, everything changes. Instead of listening to respond, you listen to reveal. Reveal what the person values. Reveal what they're afraid of. Reveal what they're really asking. Reveal the truth beneath the surface. When you listen like this, you no longer feel pressured to over-explain, because your responses become laser-focused. Instead of giving 5 paragraphs, you give 1 sentence. Instead of unloading everything at once, you deliver exactly what the moment requires. Instead of rambling, you speak with precision. Here's a powerful insight. The better you listen, the less you need to say. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine someone says, "I'm frustrated that the plan changed." An over-explainer reacts immediately. They interpret the frustration as blame. They rush to defend themselves. They start over-justifying. "I only changed it because the timeline shifted. And I didn't mean to catch you off guard. And I was trying to make things easier. And I thought it would be better this way." Too much. Too fast. Too defensive. A smart communicator listens past the words and hears the emotion. Frustration. They stay calm. They listen longer than they speak. Then they respond with clean clarity. "I hear that? What part of the change felt most frustrating to you?" Now, the listener feels understood. Not argued with. Not flooded with explanation. Not overwhelmed. Deep listening turns conflict into clarity, and clarity into connection. Let's talk about another skill smart communicators use: listening for the question behind the question. People don't always articulate what they really mean. Sometimes their words are incomplete. Sometimes they're emotional. Sometimes they're indirect. Sometimes they're unclear even to themselves. Over-explainers answer questions literally, and then keep adding more, because the literal answer never feels like enough. But smart communicators listen for the hidden layer. They sense the intention. For example, someone asks, "Can you send that to me today?" The over-explainer thinks, "They need it immediately," and spirals into stress and justification. The smart communicator listens deeper and thinks, "Are they asking for urgency, or are they asking for certainty?" So they respond cleanly, "I can send it tomorrow morning. Will that work?" Direct, respectful, precise. Listening helps you aim your words like an arrow instead of spraying them like confetti. Another key element of powerful listening is something simple but rare: pausing before responding. Over-explainers hate this. Pausing feels like losing control. Pausing feels like you don't know what to say. Pausing feels like silence you need to fill. But pausing is not weakness. Pausing is composure. A pause says, "I'm thinking, I'm processing, I want to respond intentionally." The most confident speakers pause often. They give themselves time. They give the listener space. They let the conversation breathe. Over-explainers do the opposite. They react. Reaction is fast. Reaction is emotional. Reaction is chaotic. Reaction is unfiltered. And reaction leads to long, tangled explanations. Because you're speaking faster than your thoughts can organize. But when you pause, even for a second, your mind aligns. Your message cleans itself before you speak it. Your words come out in their proper shape. Pausing is not the absence of something. Pausing is the creation of something. Clarity. Now let's talk about one more listening skill that separates mediocre communicators from extraordinary ones: reflective listening. This is not repeating someone's words mechanically. It's paraphrasing the emotional truth behind what they said. For example, someone says, "I'm worried we won't finish on time." The over-explainer replies, "Well, we had these delays, and I know you're stressed, and I've been trying really hard, and I think we can still make it if..." Too much, too scattered. The smart communicator says, "Sounds like the deadline is weighing on you." This simple reflection does three powerful things. It shows the listener you understand. It makes them feel heard. And it reduces their emotional intensity, which creates space for a clearer conversation. Listening isn't passive. Listening is active. Listening is leadership. And here's the hidden truth. When you truly listen, the other person starts talking more, and you naturally talk less. Not because you're holding back, but because you don't need to fill the space anymore. You're learning, you're absorbing, you're connecting. You no longer feel the pressure to perform your explanations. Because listening gives you everything you need to respond with impact instead of volume. When you master listening, you stop chasing conversations. You guide them, you influence them, you shape them. Listening becomes your superpower, the skill that elevates every word you speak. And as this ability grows, you'll notice something profound. Your presence changes. People feel calmer around you. People feel understood. People feel safe opening up. People feel drawn to your energy. Because a good speaker impresses people, but a good listener moves them. And the moment you learn to listen with full presence, your words, fewer, clearer, steadier words, begin to carry a weight they never had before. There's a quiet truth about communication that most people never discover until much later in life. You don't become a powerful speaker by adding more. You become one by removing what no longer serves you. You remove the fear. You remove the overthinking. You remove the unnecessary details, the nervous disclaimers, the spiraling explanations. You remove the noise so the signal, your message, your intention, your presence can finally be heard. This is where the art of minimalist communication comes in. Minimalism isn't about saying little. It's about saying exactly enough. No more, no less. It's about delivering ideas in their strongest form, clean, focused, unburdened. Think of a sculptor. They don't create by adding clay. They create by removing what isn't the statue. The same is true for communication. Your most impactful voice emerges not when you try to sound impressive, but when you strip away the excess and reveal the essence. Let's explore this deeply. Minimalist communication starts with one transformative idea. Every word must have a job. Most people speak like managers of a company that hires too many employees. Their sentences are full of extra workers, unnecessary words taking up space, doing nothing useful, slowing everything down. But smart communicators run a lean company. Every word has a purpose. Every sentence has a direction. Every message has a destination. When a word doesn't serve the message, they remove it. And the result is clarity. Minimalism is not about being brief. It's about being effective. Let's look at this with a simple example. You could say, if it's not too much trouble, and only if you have some free time, I was wondering if you might help me review this when you get the chance. Or you could say, could you help me review this? Second version, shorter, cleaner, more confident, but still polite, still warm, still human. Minimalism sharpens your presence. Now let's talk about something people rarely notice. Over-explaining weakens authority. Minimalism strengthens it. Why? Because authority, real, quiet authority, comes from a sense of inner certainty. Think of a leader you admire. They don't fire hose you with explanation. They speak with calm, measured clarity. They don't waste words. They don't ramble. They don't flood the moment with all the information in their head. They choose what matters. They discard what doesn't. They trust that their message stands. Minimalism is leadership in linguistic form. Let's explore another principle of minimalist communication. Stop answering questions people never asked. Over-explainers do this constantly. Someone asks a simple question, how long will it take? And suddenly the answer becomes a long speech about reasons, circumstances, fears, and context that no one requested. But smart communicators give the answer, and only the answer. How long will it take? About an hour. If they want more, they'll ask. Minimalism respects the listener's intelligence. The next principle is subtle, but powerful. Don't protect your message with padding. Protect it with precision. Over-explainers pad their message with extra phrases. It's just that. I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but I don't want to make things complicated, but I feel like maybe. These phrases feel gentle, but they actually weaken your voice. They make your message sound hesitant, diluted, uncertain. Minimalist communicators protect their message not by softening it, but by delivering it cleanly, confidently, calmly. For example, I think we should try a different approach. I'm not saying this is the only way, and I know everyone worked really hard, and I'm not trying to criticize, but maybe we could possibly consider trying something different. The clean version is more respectful, more grounded, more effective. Because real respect doesn't come from pleasing people. It comes from being honest with them. Minimalist communication also relies on a powerful habit. Say the point once. Let it stand. Over-explainers repeat the same point 3 or 4 different ways, hoping that repetition will increase understanding. But repetition often communicates insecurity. If your message is clear, say it once. If clarification is needed, let the listener tell you. Minimalism trusts the listener. Over-explaining tries to control them. Let's talk about something else. Minimalists practice effortlessly. The power of the short answer. Someone asks, "Are you free on Friday?" Over-explainer, "I think so. But I'm not completely sure because I might have dinner with a friend. And I also need to check on something earlier that day. But I'll try my best." Minimalist, "I'm free." Or, "I'm not free." Or, "I need to check." Short answers don't make you cold. They make you clear. Minimalist communication is clarity without fear. Now here's something that might surprise you. Minimalism is not about being quiet. It's about being intentional. You can still be expressive. You can still be warm. You can still be passionate, emotional, humorous, poetic, bold. But every expression is chosen, not spilled, not leaked, not tangled with unnecessary detail. Minimalism creates space for emphasis. When every sentence isn't overloaded, you can highlight the sentences that matter. Here's a powerful psychological truth. People listen more closely when you speak less, because less creates weight, less creates focus, less creates presence. Minimalist communicators understand this instinctively. They don't compete for attention, they create it. A minimalist message is like a clear window. There's nothing blocking the view, nothing distracting, nothing pulling the listener away. They see your message. They feel your intention. They understand your point. Minimalism is clarity in its purest form, and when you embrace it, when you stop filling every moment with verbal noise, you experience something profound. Your voice becomes stronger. Your presence becomes more grounded. People remember what you say. People respect how you speak. People trust the simplicity of your message. You no longer sound like you're trying to earn understanding. You sound like you already have it. Minimalism teaches you the most important lesson of communication. Impact isn't created by the amount of words you speak. It's created by the amount of meaning you deliver. And the less you rely on unnecessary explanation, the more powerful your meaning becomes. When you step back and look at everything we've explored, a single truth becomes clear. Communication isn't just about expressing ideas. It's about expressing yourself. Your confidence, your clarity, your boundaries, your presence, your intention. And over-explaining has been quietly dimming all of that. It has been making your voice smaller. It has been making your message heavier. It has been making your presence more hesitant than it needs to be. But you've now seen what happens when you remove the excess. When you breathe before you speak. When you choose intention instead of impulse. When you trust silence. When you build structure. When you lead with clarity. When you ground your tone. When you listen deeply. When you stop padding your truth with unnecessary explanations. When you speak not for reassurance, but for meaning. You've learned the psychology behind over-explaining. How fear and self-doubt push you to add more words than the moment requires. You've learned how to slow your pace so your message can finally breathe. You've learned how to create internal clarity before you speak, so your thoughts come out clean rather than crowded. You've learned how structure turns your ideas into something people can actually follow and remember. You've learned the art of clean assertiveness, speaking your truth without apology or unnecessary justification. You've learned how listening elevates your presence, how silence strengthens your impact, how minimalism sharpens your voice. You have learned to remove the noise so your signal can shine. And what emerges is a communicator who speaks with impact, not because you're louder, not because you talk more, not because you explain every detail, but because you have learned to trust your message. Trust the moment. Trust yourself. There will still be times when you feel the old impulse rising, that little urge to clarify, justify, soften, over-explain. But now you'll catch it. You'll feel the tension before it becomes a sentence. You'll pause. You'll breathe. You'll choose clarity instead of fear. And in that moment, that tiny, powerful moment, you reclaim your voice. And that voice, now steady and intentional, will begin to reshape the way people see you. You'll notice people listen more closely. You'll notice people show you more respect. You'll notice conversations feel easier, more grounded, more balanced. You'll notice you no longer exhaust yourself trying to manage the listener's perception. You speak. You stop. You allow the message to land. You trust that it will. This is what powerful communicators do. They don't drown their ideas in explanation. They deliver them with clarity. They give them space. They let their presence speak as loudly as their words. And if you embrace these principles, truly embrace them, your communication will transform not just in important conversations, but in every conversation. Your boundaries will become cleaner. Your leadership will feel more natural. Your personal relationships will feel more honest. Your professional presence will grow stronger. Your inner voice will feel lighter. Because over-explaining comes from fear, but impactful communication comes from truth. And the truth is already within you, waiting to be spoken simply, confidently, and with intention. So as we close this journey, carry this with you. You don't need to prove your worth through your words. You don't need to justify your presence. You don't need to fill every silence. You don't need to wrap your message in layers of explanation. You are enough. Your message is enough. Your clarity is enough. Speak with intention. Speak with confidence. Speak with purpose. Because the smartest communicators aren't the ones who say the most. They're the ones who say what matters and let it stand. And when you stop over-explaining, you stop diluting your truth. You stop shrinking your presence. You stop wasting your power. You speak cleanly. You speak calmly. You speak courageously. And people feel it. Because the smartest communicators aren't the ones who overflow with words. They're the ones who listen fast, think clear, and speak with purpose. And now, that communicator is you. Before you go, take a moment to breathe in everything you've learned. And if this journey spoke to you, if it helped you see communication in a new way, I invite you to stay connected. There is so much more ahead. And I would be honored to walk that path with you. So if you want more ideas like this, more lessons to strengthen your voice and your mind, feel free to subscribe and stay with us. Because this isn't the end of the conversation. It's the beginning of speaking with clarity, purpose, and confidence. Every single day.